Jai. So today we're continuing with the discussion between Vidura and Uddhava. But before we go there, I wanted to cover a little more intricately the timeline that's going on here, where we are in the full big picture story. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Janma karma chame divyam evam yo viditattvataha tattva deham punar janma naitimam eti soarjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my birth and activities in truth does not take birth again in this material world. So studying this disappearance of the Lord is kind of where we're at in one sense of this conversation. Uddhava has just come from Dwarka, and he's on his way to Badrika Ashram, where Krishna had explained to him before leaving that he wanted Uddhava to go there and share this message with the sages at Badrika Ashram and the Narayan deity. So from Uddhava's point of view, we learn that this is just after the disappearance of Krishna and the Yadu dynasty. But from Vidura's point of view, it can get a little bit more confusing. From Vidura's point of view, he left the palace. We remember we read previously in this third canto how Vidura was offended by Duryodhana and left the palace. This was just prior to the battle of Kurukshetra. Krishna had come to the palace to speak with the Kurus about negotiating a peace settlement, but the Kurus offended him and he left. Then Dhritarashtra asked for Vidura for advice. Duryodhana offended him and he left the palace. Now, from the time of the battle of Kurukshetra, after that, King Yudhisthira became the emperor of the world. He was emperor for 36 years. And it was also 36 years from the time of the battle of Kurukshetra until the Yadu dynasty was finished and Krishna left. So since Uddhava is coming from Dwarka, where Krishna has just left, we can understand that it's approximately 36 years later, after he left the palace, that he's meeting with Uddhava. Now, I want to share my screen and show how in the first canto, when Vidura returns to the palace and instructs his older brother Dhritarashtra that it's time to leave this palace, I want to go back to that part of the Srimad Bhagavatam and share that. So hold on here. Now here, this is the table of contents to the first canto. And what we see here is that there's the birth of Emperor Parikshit. Then it says Dhritarashtra quits home. Then the disappearance of Lord Krishna. Then the Pandavas retire timely. But we're learning here that that's not actually the timeline. This isn't sequential according to proper time, because we just heard that this disappearance of Lord Krishna took place and Uddhava and Vidura are meeting one another. Vidura will then go to Maitreya Muni, and then he will go back to the palace, which means this chapter sequentially comes after. But let us read just a little bit here so that you can see what's okay, this is everybody approaches him. Okay. Having won his kingdom and observed the birth of one grandson competent to continue the noble tradition of his family, Maharaj Yudhisthira reigned peacefully and enjoyed uncommon opulence in cooperation with his younger brothers, who were all expert administrators to the common people. Insurmountable eternal time imperceptibly overcame those who are too much attached to family affairs and always engrossed in their thought. Oh, he's talking with Vidura. I want to go back here. There was a part here. Here it says, in text 12, being questioned by Maharaj Yudhisthira, Mahatma Vidura gradually described everything that he had personally experienced, except news of the annihilation of the Yadu dynasty. Compassionate Mahatma Vidura could not stand to see the Pandavas distressed at any time. Therefore, he did not disclose this unpalatable and unbearable incident, because calamities come of their own accord. So timeline, this means that Mahatma Vidura knew that the Yadu dynasty had been finished. The annihilation of the dynasty had come. It had already happened. So back to our, let me get back to this. Okay, so this Dhritarashtra quit home pastime, which we just read, took place after the disappearance of Lord Krishna. Just so we're clear in the timeline, I wanted to share that with everyone. Now what we can do is go to our readings of November 2021. Srimad Bhagavatam's actually, this is 3 and 4. I forgot to change it. So Samapriya, you want to say who's going to lead, please? Read.
Yes, Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back. This is a wonderful part of the Bhagavatam that we're studying here to understand the essence of the pure devotees. So we'll begin today with Vaishnavi. Would you like to read first?
Yes, please. Okay, so, O gentle one, Srimad Bhagavatam 3.1.41. O gentle one, I simply lament for him, Dhritarashtra, who rebelled against his brother after death. By him I was driven out of my own house, although I am his sincere well-wisher, because he accepted the line of action adopted by his own sons. Purport. Vidura did not ask about the welfare of his elder brother, because there was no chance of his well-being, only news of his gliding down to hell. Vidura was a sincere well-wisher for Dhritarashtra, and he had a thought about him in the corner of his heart. He lamented that Dhritarashtra could rebel against the sons of his dead brother Pandu, and that he could drive him, Vidura, out of his own house in the dictation of his crooked sons. In spite of these actions, Vidura never became an enemy of Dhritarashtra, but continued to be his well-wisher. And at the last stage of Dhritarashtra's life, it was Vidura only who proved to be his real friend. Such is the behavior of Vaishnava like Vidura. He desires all good even for his enemies.
So one question, is this happening after the disappearance this particular sequence? This is, in other words, happening after Lord Krishna has passed, and after the time, not after the Pandavas have retired. This is before Vidura goes back to the palace. Okay, so we got that straight.
He's meeting Uddhava. But what's astounding, another point to appreciate, is that he's meeting Uddhava 30 years later, 35 years later, and he's still talking about how he got burned by Duryodhana. Everybody's already dead. That battle, their annihilation has already happened. But yes, this is before he goes and meets Maitreya Muni, and prior to his going back to Dhritarashtra. So he's expressing, he's asked Uddhava about everyone, And now he's expressing still his love for his brother.
Let's see. Okay. Vaishnavi, why don't you, is there anything else?
Yeah, so did Vidura meet Uddhava only once in his lifetime? Is that how we read it?
In this sequence, yes.
Okay,
Obviously, they knew each other previously in life,
right.
right? As the Yadus and the Kurus exchanged social conventions, and Uddhava had gone to Hastinapur as a counselor from the Yadu dynasty. So they knew each other. But in this particular meeting, yes, this is only once. After Krishna had left, Uddhava's on his way to Badrika Ashram, and he met Vidura.
So one more question. In other words, after Krishna left, Yudhisthira Maharaj was continuing to rule for
Yes.
36 years. So they
No,
retired.
not for
Oh,
36 years after Krishna left. 36 years after the Battle of Kurukshetra.
okay. But he continued, I see. Okay. Vaishnavi, continue reading.
Okay. Uh, 3.142. I am not astonished at this, having traveled over the world without being seen by others. The activities of the personality of Godhead, which are like those of a man in this mortal world, are bewildering to others. But I know of his greatness by his grace, and thus I am happy in all respects. Purport. Although he was the brother of Dhritarashtra, Vidura was completely different. By the grace of Lord Krishna, he was not foolish like his brother, and thus his brother's association could not influence him. Dhritarashtra and his materialistic sons wanted to falsely lord it over the world by dint of their own strength. The Lord encouraged them in this, and thus they become more and more bewildered. But Vidura wanted to achieve sincere devotional service of the Lord, and therefore became a soul absolutely surrendered to the absolute personality of Godhead. He could realize this in the progress of his pilgrim's journey, and thus he was freed from all doubts.
Here we see again the progress of his pilgrim's journey. This is a very wonderful contemplation. Any
Yes.
comment, Pachi?
Yeah, it also shows how important it was that Vidura knew. We remember last week we read that Krishna was still present on the planet when he left the palace, but feeling insufficient piety to associate directly with Krishna, insufficient in that he didn't feel confident and mature enough. So he went on pilgrimage, and we can see that by that activity of traveling on pilgrimage now for 30 years, he's become completely detached to the point where the activities of his brother and the palace and everything like that are no longer bothering him. So it takes time, and we should know that those activities of traveling to holy places, associating with devotees, constantly, we heard Krishna in the Brahma Samhita say, slow degrees with perseverance, they have an effect.
Wonderful. Thank you. Let's hear from Chaitamayi. Would you like to read? Continue.
Haribol. Okay, purport continued. He was not at all sorry to be bereft of his hearth and home, because he had now had experience that dependence on the mercy of the Lord is a greater freedom than so-called freedom at home. A person should not be in the renounced order of life unless he is firmly convinced of being protected by the Lord. This stage of life is explained in Bhagavad Gita as Abhayam Sattva Samshuddhihi. Every living entity is factually completely dependent on the mercy of the Lord. But unless one is in the pure stage of existence, he cannot be established in this position. This stage of dependence is called Sattva Samshuddhihi, or purification of one's existence. The result of such purification is exhibited in fearlessness. A devotee of the Lord who is called Narayana Para is never afraid of anything because he is always aware of the fact that the Lord protects him in all circumstances. With this conviction, Vidura traveled alone, and he was not seen or recognized by any friend or foe. Thus, he enjoyed freedom of life without obligation to the many duties of the world. When Lord Krishna was personally present in the mortal world in his eternal blissful form of Shyamasundar, those who were not pure devotees of the Lord could not recognize him or know his glories. Avagyanati mam mudha manusim tanum ashritam. Bhagavad Gita 9:11. He is always bewildering to the non-devotees, but he is always seen by the devotees by dint of their pure devotional service to him.
Thank you. What does that last sentence mean?
Let's see. Let me see it again.
How do you want to put it up?
Sure.
Oh,
Sorry about that.
right.
Okay.
He's always bewildering to the non-devotees, but he is always seen by the devotees by dint of their pure devotional service to him. Does that mean that we're all seeing Krishna all the time?
It means that's what we're aspiring for, but we have a lot of work to do before we get there. And thus the process of sadhana bhakti. We're gradually letting go of our materialistic vision and becoming more in touch, more attuned to, more oriented towards our spiritual vision. And it's a long and gradual process.
Right. So to the extent that one is separate himself from material consciousness and identification with the body, to that extent, his devotional service will progress.
There was that verse in the previous chapter which spoke about Vidura going to the different temples, and Prabhupada was explaining that to the extent that one has purity of vision, one is able to see Krishna in all of those archamurtis. But we're not there yet. We're just, for some of us, it's still just stone and metal and so on. But we have to go through this process. And I'm very astonished hearing that Vidura feels he has a need for purification after all that he's been through and all of he's demonstrated as a devotee. And if he has to go through purification, what to speak of us?
So this is the natural mentality of the devotee, that he is always feeling that he is not pure enough and he has to go through purification. So Nanda, I was just going to call on Nanda to read next. So Nanda, please speak.
I just have a comment also, because seeing Krishna doesn't necessarily mean seeing Krishna in his, threefold bending form, playing his flute, but it also means seeing Krishna's hand in our life, how he's protecting us, interacting, teaching, whatever. And that's a little, in a sense, it's indirect. It's indirect seeing that, but it's also very direct at the same time. First, appreciating it as, and seeing it as arrangement.
Right. So we have to learn. We have to learn to see Krishna in everything.
Yeah.
In all of our activities and everything. I'm learning that from Nanda is always doing that. She's always seeing in things that happen all throughout the day. Krishna, this is Krishna. So I'm trying to pick up on that, to see that Krishna is always organizing everything, everyone's lives, but what to speak of the lives of his devotees. Thank you, Nanda. So go on reading if you can.
Okay, Srimad Bhagavatam 3:143. Despite his being the Lord and being always willing to relieve the distress of the sufferers, he, Krishna, refrained from killing the Kurus, although they committed all sorts of sins, and although he saw other kings constantly agitating the earth by their strong military movements carried out under the dictation of the three kinds of false pride. Purport. As declared in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord appears in the mortal world to execute his much needed mission of killing the miscreants and giving protection to the suffering faithful. In spite of that mission, the Lord Krishna tolerated the insult to Draupadi by the Kurus and the injustices perpetrated against the Pandavas, as well as insults to himself. The question may be raised, why did he tolerate such injustices and insults in his presence? Why did he not chastise the Kurus immediately? When Draupadi was insulted in the assembly by the Kurus by their attempt to see her naked in the presence of all, the Lord protected Draupadi by supplying an unlimited length of clothing, but he did not chastise the insulting party immediately. The silence of the Lord did not mean, however, that he excused the offenses of the Kurus. There were many other kings on earth who had become very proud of three kinds of possessions: wealth, education, and followers, and they were constantly agitating the earth by movements of military strength. The Lord was just waiting to get them together on the battle of Kurukshetra and kill them all at one time, just to make a shortcut of his killing mission. Godless kings or heads of states, when puffed up by advancement of material wealth, education, and increase of population, always make a show of military strength and give trouble to the innocent. When Lord Krishna was personally present, there were many such kings all over the world, and he thus arranged for the battle of Kurukshetra. In his manifestation of Vishvarup, the Lord expressed his mission of killing as follows, quote, "I have willingly descended to the earth in my capacity to in my capacity of inexorable time in order to decrease the unwanted population. I shall finish all those who have assembled here, except you, the Pandavas. This killing does not wait for you to take part in it. It is already arranged, and all will be killed by me. If you want to become famous as the hero of the battlefield and thus enjoy the booty of war, then, O Savyasachi, just become the immediate cause of this killing and thus take the credit. I have already killed all these great warriors, Bhishma, Drona, Jayadratha, Karna, and many other great generals. Do not worry. Fight the battle and become famous as a great hero." That's from the Bhagavad Gita, 11th chapter, verses 32 to 34. The Lord always wants to see his devotee as a hero of some episode which he himself performs. He wanted to see his devotee and friend Arjuna as the hero of the battle of Kurukshetra, and thus he waited for all the miscreants of the world to assemble. That and nothing else is the explanation of his waiting.
But
Unmute.
Nanda can give
Yeah.
us, I'm unmute. So, but Nandaji, please expand upon that.
It's an amazing verse and purport. There's a couple of things that struck me in that, and that quote of the Bhagavad Gita from verse 11th chapter through 32 to 34, I think it was. I just love when Prabhupada says it in a different way. You know, it's not the exact translation of the quotes or the verses from the Gita, but it is the exact meaning of it. And I just love it when he just says it in a slightly different way and you get a few more nuances of the circumstance. But also mentioned there was how Prabhupada said at the end, he said, that was the reason and no other reason that why the Lord waited. He had a plan. So sometimes we also think in our life, like when he was talking about how political leaders, they always get puffed up with wealth and followers and they always want to make a show of military strength. And also then they give suffering to the innocent. And it's just like, it reminded me when I was reading it this time, it reminded me of the story that Prabhupada gives about the foolish man who was sawing a tree branch off. but he was sitting on the other edge of the branch while he was sawing. And a man came by and said, you know, you're going to fall. And he said, what do you mean? I'm just sawing this branch. Anyway, so he keeps sawing, and the branch breaks and he falls down. And then the foolish man thinks that the man who said you're going to fall was like an astrologer or a mystic, had a mystic vision, but actually he could just see the result. So Srila Prabhupada, when he would also talk about, you know, there's inevitably going to be another war, a big world war. And we often viewed it as like a mystic vision of Srila Prabhupada's, which I'm not saying that it isn't, but in the other sense of Srila Prabhupada understanding this whole cycle of wealth, accumulation of wealth and followers and military strength, they're going to have to use it somehow or other. So he was just, he understood the result of those sinful activities is going to be suffering in some grand scale. And he would tell us to us like that. Those are just a few comments. I don't know.
Wonderful. Also, we have to, as we started when we were talking about how you have this great talent of seeing Krishna's hands in things. So that has to be our work. Our work is to surrender to Krishna and to understand his plan and how we can actually serve him through his plan rather than trying to adjust the material elements. Because when he had his plan, he said right here in the purport, this is going to happen with you or without you. Right?
Yeah.
So if we want to evolve and we want to become self-realized and situated properly, the search is for Krishna's plan. The search is, how does this relate to Krishna? And then how it relates to us. So thank you for that.
And just another comment is one can understand how two things. Sorry. When Draupadi was supplied the cloth, I mean, it wasn't directly obvious unless one was a devotee that Krishna was supplying that cloth, you know, so that's seeing Krishna's hand in it.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, and one might, like Prabhupada questioned in the purport, one might ask, why didn't he chastise the offenders right away? Well, he has a bigger plan than we can understand. So we have to remember that also when we're expecting some protection in this way or something in that way. But Krishna's, and so we have to be faithful that, yes, Krishna is the well-wisher and protector of the devotees. And I don't understand everything, but sooner or later we'll all come out in the wash.
And in layman's terms, patience.
I think Elizabeth had a question also. She raised her hand.
Well, I was just understanding because Krishna is the control of time. So, you know, when we say that Krishna had to wait, you know, it's like, well, he doesn't have to anything, right? So how I am understanding is that, and correct me, you know, because obviously I'm going to be wrong, but so like if he could just do anything anytime, he waits so that maybe the karma, you know, gets we suffer what we have to suffer so that we get purified. He waits so that we can participate, so that they can participate, so that they can get the benefit, like it said there. He also waits because it's the pastime that he wants to experience. You know, that's how I'm understanding that. And
Okay, so Patu, you want to do that? I have something on the tip of my tongue. We were just talking about this the other day, how if you see a mushroom, a piece of fungus growing in nature, and you say, oh, there's the fungus, and then you keep walking and you have an idea of, well, this looked like that. That's how it looked like. This particular mushroom looks this way. But if you see a time lapse of a fungus and the growth of a fungus, it is the most incredible thing. It goes through so many different phases and all the different shapes. And I mean, I've been saying fungus because I had to have seen a time lapse of the evolution of a little fungus, and it was incredible, the different stages. So when Krishna has a plan, it's not that the whole plan is revealed all at once. To accept Krishna's plan is to be a little bit patient and see how it evolves. He is time, and he takes his time to see how everything manifests. So that's why I said before that patience is a very big part of surrender and faith and seeing Krishna's plan, I believe. Do you have something to add to that? Anyone else? Pati, Nanda? No? Is that all right, Elizabeth? Okay.
Well, I will see all the faces, maybe. I will see more than the face
You
that I
have noted, the phases will happen. Whether you see them and notice them, that's your job. That's for you to do. Okay.
I've also
So-
heard that he just like with Shishupal. Was it Shishupal? What's his cousin's name? Was it Shishupal? That he gave
Yeah,
him 100 offenses that he
Yeah,
could commit.
Shishupal.
So they say that, and they're just saying in India that the pot has to be filled with their sinful activities before it's time for them to be killed. So
Right.
like even with Ravana, he had to commit some more sinful activities before it was time for him to be killed. So might have something to do
Everything,
with that
all
as
the
well.
pieces have to be put into proper place, and Krishna is in charge of that. Nanda, do you want to add something?
It's very similar to what Madhurya Leela just said, but I'll say it anyway. In one of the purports to this, it might not be this exact section that we're reading, but to this, part of the Bhagavatam, when it talks about Srila Prabhupada in the purport mentioned that Krishna allowed he encouraged Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana in their nefarious plans. Because why? Because there's always free will. So the living entity has free will, and when they want to surrender, then Krishna facilitates that. And when they don't want to surrender, Krishna also facilitates that. So it's similar to Madhurya Leela's point, but he's facilitating the free will of the living entity. He's not forcing us to act right away. And if karma was delivered to us immediately upon one sinful action, then we refrain from the sinful action out of fear of the punishment, but not out of the regret for disobeying the order of the Lord, out of voluntary. Okay.
Good.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you.
you.
And Kamsa was another example, actually, too. He had to commit a
That's
certain amount
comes
of.
to us. Everything,
sinful.
Krishna has a plan. Everything has to catch up to it. Everything has to catch up to Krishna's plan. Okay, so let's go on with Marvin. Would you like to read, Mr. Higgins?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mataji.
Okey-dokey.
Srimad Bhagavatam 3.1.44. The appearance of the Lord is manifested for the annihilation of the upstarts. His activities are transcendental and are enacted for the understanding of all persons. Otherwise, since the Lord is transcendental to all material modes, what purpose could he serve by coming to earth? Report. The law of karma enacted by the Supreme Lord for the living entities cannot be applicable to him, nor has the Lord any desire to improve himself by activities like those of ordinary living beings. Ordinary living beings work for the improvement of their conditional lives, but the Lord is already full of all opulence, all strength, all fame, all beauty, all knowledge, and all renunciation. Why should he desire improvement? No one can excel him in any opulence, and therefore the desire for improvement is absolutely useless for him. One should always discriminate between the activities of the Lord and those of ordinary living beings. Thus, one may come to the right conclusion regarding the Lord's transcendental position. One who can come to the conclusion of the Lord's transcendental or transcendence can become a devotee of the Lord and can at once be free from all reactions of past deeds. It is said, Karmani nidahati kintu cha bhakti bhajan. The Lord minimizes or nullifies the reactionary influence of the devotee's past deeds. Brahma Samhita 5.54.
Go on reading.
Purport continued. The secondary purpose of his appearance is to annihilate the upstart asuras and to stop the nonsense of atheistic propaganda by less intelligent persons. By the Lord's courteous mercy, the asuras who are killed personally by the personality of Godhead get salvation. The meaningful appearance of the Lord is always distinct from ordinary birth. Even the pure devotees have no connection with the material body, and certainly the Lord, who appears as he is in his Satchidananda form, is not limited by material form.
Okay, thank you. What do you think about that, Marvin? That the Lord is not limited by a material form, ever.
Correct. I think this is incredible. It takes so much to be able to accept it and to go along with it. Only a devotee, one who is in complete submission to the Lord, can accept it and believe this. That's my understanding.
Very good. It takes a devotee because a devotee has faith in God.
Correct.
Complete faith, understanding his position as a servant. Very good. Thank you. Let's go on now with Premananda. You want to read? Finish the chapter.
Yes. Srimad Bhagavatam 3.145. O my friend, please therefore chant the glories of the Lord, who is meant to be glorified in the places of pilgrimage. He is unborn, and yet he appears by his causeless mercy upon the surrendered rulers of all parts of the universe. Only for their interest did he appear in the family of his unalloyed devotees, the Yadus. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Whenever there is any trouble in the administration of the innumerable planets in different universes, the rulers pray for an appearance, and the Lord appears. The Bhagavatam 1.3.28 has already confirmed this in the following verse. Ete chamsa kalapumsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam Indra Rivyakulam Lokam Midayanti Yuge Yuge. In every millennium, whenever there is any trouble for the obedient rulers, the Lord appears. He also appears for the sake of his pure, unalloyed devotees. The surrendered rulers and the pure devotees are always strictly under the control of the Lord, and they are never disobedient to the desires of the Lord. The Lord is therefore always attentive to them. Purport continued. The purpose of pilgrimages is to remember the Lord constantly, and therefore the Lord is known as Tirtha Kirti. The purpose of going to a place of pilgrimage is to get the chance to glorify the Lord. Even today, although times have changed, there are still pilgrimage sites in India. For example, in Mathura and Vrindavan, where we had the chance to stay, people are awake from early in the morning at 4 a.m. up until night time and are constantly engaged some way or other in chanting the holy glories of the Lord. The beauty of such a pilgrimage site is that automatically one remembers the holy glories of the Lord. His name, fame, quality, form, pastimes, and entourage are all identical to the Lord, and therefore chanting the glories of the Lord invokes the personal presence of the Lord. Anytime or anywhere pure devotees meet and chant the glories of the Lord is present without any doubt. It is said by the Lord himself that he always stays where his pure devotees chant his glories. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, first chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Questions by Vidura.
Thank you. This reminds us, this reference to pilgrimage, it reminds us that this is about the pilgrimage that Vidura is making and has made, and the mentality of one on pilgrimage is to understand that he's the servant of God, servant of Krishna, and not care for external things like dress or reputation. And therefore he's free to worship the Lord at all times, in all circumstances. That's what this, what do you think, Premananda?
Yes, that's right. And I'm kind of, it's so beautiful that Srimad Bhagavatam and every other scriptures, everything boils down to chanting of the holy name, right?
Mhm.
Here Vidura has visited all the pilgrimages, and still he's saying that, okay, fine, you guys, if you are not able to visit the pilgrimages, but you should still chant the holy name of the Lord, because the Lord and his holy name are non-different. So that we are also associating with the Lord and visiting the pilgrimage. Just like in this month of Kartik, we are not physically in Vrindavan or Maya, but still we are associating with devotees, reading Srimad Bhagavatam, chanting the holy name. So we are also directly associating with Krishna in that sense. So that's
Good.
what I understood from this purport.
Very good. You know, going on pilgrimage, sometimes it's considered by very exalted devotees to be, you know, a disturbance to their service.
Mhm.
To go on pilgrimage. It's certainly a purification to go visit the holy places and where Krishna had his pastimes. But if it interrupts your service, you'd rather not do that.
Right.
And anyone else has something to add before we go to the next chapter? Pati, did you want to say something? Or Nanda?
Yeah,
Do ya?
just now we're going into this next one. I don't know if everybody reads the letters or the notifications that I send out every week, or twice a week before every lesson. But I was pointing out the literary technique that Vyasadeva incorporates in weaving Srimad Bhagavatam. Practically speaking, chapter 1 was mostly, once they met, questions by Vidura. He leads the conversation. He leads the next speaker towards certain topics. We find this all the way from the very beginning with the sages of Naimisharanya and Sutta Goswami, then Maharaj Pariksit and Sukadev Goswami, Narada and Brahma, and now we see Vidura with Uddhava. So that chapter is now completed. The questions by Vidura are over, and now the whole text and focus and meditations transform from Vidura to Uddhava. So let's continue now with Uddhava.
Prabhu, can I ask something?
Certainly.
Okay, so so the questions of Vidura, they spanned 2 cantos, the last part of canto, 2 chapters of third canto, the last few verses of the first chapter and this chapter where we are starting, which we are starting right now. So is that how structurally Srimad Bhagavatam has been kind of divided into chapters? Because I thought the questions can all be formed in one chapter.
No.
Oh, no, it's not a strict unchangeable technique. It's just one to note in the way the book is crafted, that he'll have one chapter where there are a lot of questions and then switch to the answers in subsequent chapters. But no, obviously there are questions even in the middle of a chapter sometimes. The person will, the hearer will break in and ask, or sometimes there's even a conversation. And sometimes they veer off into other conversations.
Right.
Okay.
Questions, there's questions and there's questions within questions. You know, there's different situations where like Vidura and Uddhava are speaking but that's a conversation going on because Sukadev Goswami originally the 6 questions were asked in the beginning of the Bhagavatam. So these are questions within questions. Sometimes we see that too. Is that logical?
Yes. Yeah.
One more point for clarity. This picture we see on our screen is at the time when Krishna is just preparing to leave and close his manifest pastimes. Uddhava came. Uddhava's this one, and he's speaking with Krishna. And by chance, Maitreya Muni also happened to come. So this is why I've used that artwork there. This is Maitreya, Uddhava, and Lord Krishna. Next.
Okay, yes. Let's go on with Faye. Would you like to read to start this chapter?
Yes, Mataji. Srimad Bhagavatam 3.2, verses 1 through 2. Sri Sukadev Goswami said, when the great devotee Uddhava was asked by Vidura to speak on messages of the dearest Lord Krishna, Uddhava was unable to answer immediately due to excessive anxiety at the remembrance of the Lord. He was one who, even in his childhood, at the age of 5 years, was so absorbed in the service of Lord Krishna that when he was called by his mother for morning breakfast, he did not wish to have it. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. From his very birth, Uddhava was a natural devotee of Lord Krishna, or a Nityasita, a liberated soul. From natural instinct, he used to serve Lord Krishna, even in his childhood. He used to play with dolls in the form of Krishna. He would serve the dolls by dressing, feeding, and worshiping them, and thus he was constantly absorbed in the play of transcendental realization. These are the signs of an eternally liberated soul. An eternally liberated soul is a devotee of the Lord who never forgets him. The Pancharatriki formula for training persons in devotional service is temple worship, whereby the neophytes get the opportunity to learn devotional service to the Lord. Maharaja Parikshit used to play with Krishna dolls in his childhood. In India, the children in good families are still given dolls of the Lord, like Rama and Krishna, or sometimes the demigods, so that they may develop the aptitude of service to the Lord. By the grace of the Lord, we were given the same opportunity by our parents, and the beginning of our life was based on this principle.
Thank you. Thank you, Faye. This reminds me also of how Srila Prabhupada established his Gurukulas and Prabhupada disciples, and now everyone really is training their children. I remember training my daughter to worship or just giving her Jagannath deities. That was, it was suggested amongst all the devotees that Prabhupada said that we should give our children Lord Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra. So all the children had Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra, and they made Rathayatras, and it was very, very sweet. Even today, my daughter still has those deities, and she worships them. Okay, so let's go on now with Madhurya Leela, unless anyone has something to say. No? Okay. We'll go on now reading with Madhurya. Pati, did you want to say something? I can't hear you.
I just want to, you're kind of contradicting what Srila Prabhupada just said, or I don't know if you're contradicting him. But he's pointing out that one who is so absorbed in the deity, even from childhood, it's a symptom of an eternally liberated soul. This is a very rare circumstance in all of Srila Prabhupada's books, all his letters, all his lectures. He's talking about a Nitya Siddha devotee and the symptoms of what a Nitya Siddha devotee is, an eternally liberated soul who doesn't have to come to this material world, but does so on the order of Krishna to render some service. One of the symptoms of those types of people, those types of souls, is that from their very childhood, they're remembering and worshiping Krishna. So
Well,
just because somebody does that doesn't make them a Nitya Siddha person.
Of course, I didn't say that it made anyone a Nitya Siddha.
I'm just
but
clarifying.
I'm just saying that Prabhupada instructed all
Certainly.
of his disciples to give their children deities so that they would be trained from the beginning of their lives to worship Krishna. It's just like we're chanting Hare Krishna now. It's not that we're Haridas Thakur, but we're still accepting the sadhana, and eventually we will become purified. And if we give children deities, they're used to seeing and worshiping Krishna for their whole lives. You know, not that not that maybe some of them, most of them maybe didn't have a taste from the very birth, and they're not Nitya Siddhas, but they're special. Prabhupada even said the children who are taking birth in this movement, they're special souls who are there to continue their devotional service. And certainly we're all in the material world with conditioned souls, but what a great opportunity to continue your devotional service from birth, pretty much, and be given deities of the Lord. So that becomes part of your play. It becomes part of your life.
Certainly.
So
I was
not
just
to-
sticking,
not to
I was just
indicate-
sticking with the point of Nitya Siddha and
Oh, I
what's
see.
being brought
No,
out in the
it's-
text.
well, I was on a different side as a mother. I was thinking of how wonderful it is that Srila Prabhupada cared so much about the children and wanted to see
Certainly.
them develop their love for Krishna. And that was his duty. He felt it was his duty to teach us how to train the children from the beginning. Anyway, we're allowed to disagree, my husband and I, but that's how it becomes we churn the nectar that way. Okay, so next we will have who didn't read yet? Oh, Sulakshana just joined us. I think everyone else read? Sulakshana, would you like to read?
I think you said Madhurya Leela.
Oh, Madhurya Leela. I'm sorry. See, I'm getting old. Madhurya, could you read? And then Sulakshana.
Text 3.2.3. Uddhava thus served the Lord continually from childhood, and in his old age, that attitude of service never slackened. As soon as he was asked about the message of the Lord, he at once remembered all about him. Purport. Transcendental service to the Lord is not mundane. The service attitude of the devotee gradually increases and never becomes slackened. Generally, in old age, the person is allowed retirement from mundane service, but in the transcendental service of the Lord, there is no retirement at all. On the contrary, the service attitude increases more and more with the progress of age. In the transcendental service, there is no satiation, and therefore there's no retirement. Materially, when a man becomes fired or tired by rendering service in his physical body, he's allowed retirement. But in the transcendental service, there is no feeling of fatigue because it is spiritual service and is not on the bodily plane. Service on the bodily plane dwindles as the body grows old, but the spirit is never old. And therefore, on the spiritual plane, the service is never tiresome. Uddhava undoubtedly became old, but that does not mean that his spirit became old. His service attitude matured on the transcendental plane, and therefore, as soon as he was questioned by Vidura about Lord Krishna, he at once remembered his Lord by reference to the context and forgot himself on the physical plane. This is the sign of pure devotional service to the Lord, as will be explained later on Lakshanam, Bhakti, Yogasya, etc. in Lord Kapila's instructions to his mother Devahuti.
Okay. Next, we will have Sulakshana. Do you want to say something about that, Madhurya?
Well, I was thinking about this point just recently that the retirement part. We're forced to, sometimes forced to, or sometimes have, want to retire from our material jobs, but in spiritual life, it seems like we get busier as the time goes on. It's busier. No time for relaxing. Even when you do relax, you go to the dham or do something that's different, but a different type of devotional service. So it's never you never retire from devotional life.
Never a dull moment, right? Krishna likes to keep us actively engaged.
Very
good.
actively, yeah.
Thank you. So I had asked Sulakshana to read. So if you would read, please, and then Elizabeth. I'm so sorry that I didn't neglect you, but if you would read after her.
Okay. So Srimad Bhagavatam 3.2.4. For a moment, he remained dead silent, and his body did not move. He became absorbed in the nectar of remembering the Lord's lotus feet in devotional ecstasy, and he appeared to be going increasingly deeper into that ecstasy. Purport. On the inquiry by Vidura about Krishna, Uddhava appeared to be awakened from slumber. He appeared to regret that he had forgotten the lotus feet of the Lord. Thus he again remembered the lotus feet of the Lord and remembered all his transcendental loving service unto him. And by so doing, he felt the same ecstasy that he used to feel in the presence of the Lord. Because the Lord is absolute, there is no difference between his remembrance and his personal presence. Thus Uddhava remained completely silent for a moment, but then he appeared to be going deeper and deeper into ecstasy. Feelings of ecstasy are displayed by highly advanced devotees of the Lord. There are 8 kinds of transcendental changes in the body: tears, shivering of the body, perspiration, restlessness, throbbing, choking of the throat, etc. And all were manifested by Uddhava in the presence of Vidura.
Thank you, Sulakshana. What do you have to say about those devotional qualities, those ecstasies?
Yeah, I mean, we all are longing for that, but Uddhava, I was just, thinking that Uddhava is such an advanced devotee of the Lord that, he was constantly remembering the Lord. But when somebody asked him the question about Krishna, he immediately went into those transformations. So my question is that he's always thinking about Krishna. So at those times, does he have those also symptoms, or only when somebody asks him about it?
Well, I don't know. Pati, what do you think?
Definitely, he had those symptoms by himself and in the association of others. Just like Lord Chaitanya sometimes would be sitting in his own room by himself chanting, and the devotees would hear him. We read in Chaitanya Charitamrita, scratching the walls or crying. Sometimes they would find him, he would get out of the room somehow, and they would find him in a cow shed, or he went into the ocean. So symptoms of ecstasy are definite. The thing is, who's going to record it or note it if it's someone who's alone? So, but the point is, those examples show that does happen. But in this particular circumstance, what's so unique and special is that by the association of the devotees, by the association of Vidura, Uddhava is being fueled, propelled into a mood which will excite and encourage his remembrance of Krishna, and thus he went into that state.
And sometimes something will happen, just like there was a devotee, Pundarik Vijayanidhi, I think was it, who saw a peacock fan. He was standing next to Prataparudra Maharaj on the roof, seeing all the devotees come to visit Lord Chaitanya to observe the Rath Yatra in Puri. So the king was asking for the names of all the different Vaishnavas, and when somebody came with a peacock fan to fan the king, this exalted devotee went into ecstasy overtly, because it reminded him of Krishna. And I think he fall off the balcony, or he endangered himself. But this is to show that sometimes something will happen that will stimulate this ecstasy. And certainly when great devotees are chanting and they have their intimate bhajan, there is ecstasy there. This is actually encouraged. That's how people continue their chanting of the holy name. It's supposed to be ecstasy all the time. Okay, so now please let's go to Elizabeth. Would you like to read?
Yes, Mataji, Srimad Bhagavatam 3-5. It was so observed by Vidura that Uddhava had all the transcendental bodily changes due to the total ecstasy, and he was trying to wipe away tears of separation from his eyes. Thus, Vidura could understand that Uddhava had completely assimilated extensive love for the Lord. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The symptoms of the highest order of devotional life were observed by Vidura, an experienced devotee of the Lord, and he confirmed Uddhava's perfectional stage of love of Godhead. Ecstatic bodily changes are manifested from the spiritual plane and are not artificial expressions developed by practice.
Go on.
The first stage is that of following the regulative principles prescribed in the codes of devotional service by Bhakti. The second stage is that the state of assimilation and realization of a steady condition of devotional service, Raganuga Bhakti. And the last stage is that of ecstasy symptomized by transcendental bodily expression, Bhava Bhakti. The 9 different modes of devotional service, such as hearing, chanting, and remembering, are the beginning of the process. By regular hearing of the glories and pastimes of the Lord, the impurities in the student's heart begin to be washed off. The more one is cleansed of impurities, the more one becomes fixed in devotional service. Gradually, the activities take the form of a steadiness, firm faith, taste, realization, and assimilation, one after another. These different stages of gradual development increase love of God to the highest stage. And in the highest stage, there are still more symptoms such as affection, anger, and attachment, gradually rising in exceptional cases to Mahabhava stage, which is generally not possible for the living entities. All these were manifested by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the personification of love of God.
Oh, wow, that's really wonderful. Do you have aspirations? Does this help you to have aspirations to achieve this highest stage of transcendental love?
I was thinking about the gopis, Mataji, when we were in the previous page. That's the first thing that I thought about was the gopis. Also, in my Namahata, we're on Canto 10th, and so we're just reading now. We just started today. Actually, we started the chapter of the Rasa dance, but previously, all the chapters previous to that is just the gopis and Krishna having this conversation and just seeing that in them. And also I thought of Bhakti Lata, like we are at that, just very, 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 very bottom, trying to attain Shraddha. So this is like, you can see it is so
good that you have that mentality, because it's these are topics that we come to when we are very fixed in our devotional life, but still it's purifying to hear. And now that you mentioned Bhakti Lata, we're moving on to the Madhya Lila here, where that's going to be discussed. Pachi, did you want to say something about this?
Yes, because Srila Prabhupada more or less did an outline of the processes of devotional service and how it develops. In this paragraph, I took liberty to add this famous verse from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Lord Chaitanya's teachings to Sanatana Goswami, which describes it's important for us as devotees to know the science, to be able, just like Srila Prabhupada would often give the example that everything has symptoms and characteristics. And by those symptoms and characteristics, you can know that something is what it is. For example, liquid. Or water. Water is wet, but it becomes ice or gas, but its natural condition is water, is liquid. There's certain tastes in different foods. Somebody could tell you this is a tomato, but if you bite into it and it tastes like a mango, you know it's not a tomato. So discerning where we're at in devotional service doesn't really depend on someone else telling you where you're at. If you know the science and understand the different symptoms, of course, by association, we can purify ourselves and come to know more clearly certain things. But these are the basic outlines here that Lord Chaitanya instructed Sanatana Goswami. Ado Shraddha Tata Sadhu Sango Ta Bhajana Kriya Tato Nartha Nivrti Syat Tato Nista Ruchis Tata Ata Shaktis Tato Bhavas Tata Premha Dunat Chati Sadanatyam Aham Premna Pradur Bhave Bhavet Krama. In the beginning, there must be faith, Shraddha. Then one becomes interested in associating with pure devotees, sadhu sangha. Thereafter, one is initiated by the spiritual master and executes the regulative principles under his orders, bhajana kriya. Thus, one is freed from all unwanted habits, anartha nivrti, and becomes firmly fixed in devotional service, nishta. You can see the progression by having a little faith, associating with devotees, and taking initiation, and following the orders is bhajana kriya. These steps don't just happen quickly. It's like a tree doesn't, especially a big tree, doesn't just grow to 90 feet high quickly. It takes time. Thus, one becomes freed from unwanted habits by following the orders, anartha nivrti, and becomes firmly fixed in devotional service, nishta. Thereafter, one develops a taste, ruchi, and attachment, atha shakti. This is the way of sadhana bhakti, the execution of regulative service according to regulative principles. Gradually, emotions intensify, bhava, and finally there is an awakening of love of God, prema. This is the gradual development of love of Godhead for the devotee interested in Krishna consciousness. So that gives us an indication also clearly where Uddhava is at and why studying and meditating on this particular devotee is so advantageous in our own development.
That was
Next.
beautiful. Thank you. Vaishnavi, you want to read this first?
Yes. Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam 3.2.6. The great devotee Uddhava soon came back from the abode of the Lord to the human plane, and wiping his eyes, he awakened his reminiscence of the past and spoke to Vidura in a pleasing mood. Purport. When Uddhava was fully absorbed in the transcendental ecstasy of love of God, he actually forgot all about the external world. The pure devotee lives constantly in the abode of the Supreme Lord, even in the present body, which apparently belongs to this world. The pure devotee is not exactly on the bodily plane. 1 minute.
Yeah.
Since he is absorbed in the transcendental thought of the Supreme. Okay, I'll read that again. The pure devotee is not exactly on the bodily plane, since he is absorbed in the transcendental thought of the Supreme. When Uddhava wanted to speak to Vidura, he came down from the abode of the Lord Dwaraka to the material plane of the human beings. Even though a pure devotee is present on this mortal planet, he is here in relation to the Lord for engagement in transcendental loving service and not for any material cause.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to ask Sulakshana to read this.
Okay. Purport continue. A living entity can live either on the material plane or in the transcendental abode of the Lord in accordance with his existential condition. The conditional changes of the living entity are explained in the Chaitanya Charitamrita in the instructions given to Sri Rupa Goswami by Lord Sri Chaitanya. Living entities all over the universes are enjoying the effects of the respective creative results of their own work, life after life. Out of all of them, some may be influenced by the association of peer devotees and thus get the chance to execute devotional service by attainment of taste. This taste is the seed of devotional service, and one who is fortunate enough to have received such a seed is advised to sow it in the core of his heart. As one cultivates a seed by pouring water to fructify it, the seed of devotional service sown in the heart of the devotee may be cultured by pouring water in the form of hearing and chanting of the holy name and pastimes of the Lord. The creeper of devotional service, so nourished, gradually grows, and the devotee, acting as a gardener, goes on pouring the water of constant hearing and chanting.
Thank you. Wait a minute, what happened? There was another, isn't there another part
Yeah.
of that purport?
Yeah.
Okay, so is that it? That's the, okay. Chaitamai, you want to read this? Didn't we?
Did Elizabeth get a chance to read?
Yeah, Elizabeth read.
Okay.
Thank you. Chaitamai, you there?
Purport, yes, Mata. Purport, the creeper of devotional service gradually grows so high that it passes through the entire material universe and enters into the spiritual sky, growing still higher and higher until it reaches the planet Goloka Vrindavan. The devotee gardener is in touch with the abode of the Lord even from the material plane by dint of performing devotional service to the Lord simply by hearing and chanting. As a creeper takes shelter of another stronger tree, similarly the creeper of devotional service, nourished by the devotee, takes shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, and thus becomes fixed. When the creeper is fixed, then the fruit of the creeper comes into existence, and the gardener who nourished it is able to enjoy this fruit of love, and his life becomes successful. That Uddhava attained this stage is evident from his dealings. He could simultaneously reach the supreme planet and still appear in this world. So,
Thank you.
this is astonishing that the devotee can be in touch with the spiritual world while still existing in the material world. I mean,
Well,
greater.
it's consciousness, it's your consciousness, right? Eventually this material world, it becomes less and less and less important. And we stop identifying the body as who we are and we start to identify ourselves with the soul. That's actually the goal.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
Mata, I had a quick question.
Yeah, sure.
Which is going back to the previous purport. I wanted to correlate the 3 processes that Prabhupada listed with the 9 processes. It wasn't clear from the explanation which would be Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, which would be Raganuga, and then there was a 3rd category as well.
Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti is
so
Raganuga.
So
yeah.
Dhruva Maharaj was so kind to give us this Madhya Lila verse that listed all 9 of them, but I'm not sure how to correlate the 9 of them to the 3 processes that Prabhupada listed.
Unmute, Pati.
Yeah.
These 3 here?
Yes.
Vaidhi Bhakti, Raganuga Bhakti, and Bhava Bhakti?
Yeah. How do they relate to the 9?
I could say quickly, real quick, that in all stages of devotional service, this is what one does serving Krishna. These are the activities that one performs while engaged in any of those 3 stages of devotional service. What do you think, Pati?
No. She's not talking about Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. What she's talking about is this verse, I believe, that she's talking, isn't it,
I see.
Chaita?
Oh, those are different stages. I see. Okay.
I'm just wondering how to categorize them, the 9, how can
Okay,
they fit
pretty,
into this?
pretty,
good.
pretty much what we're talking about is faith, association with devotees, and following, becoming initiated and following the orders of the spiritual master.
Yeah,
That is Vaidhi Bhakti,
okay, that's what I
which
want.
is the first stage by following the codes of devotional service, Vaidhi Bhakti. The second stage is that of assimilation and realization and steady condition of devotional service. So let us go here. Thus, one becomes freed from unwanted habits, anartha nivritti, and becomes firmly fixed in devotional service, nishtha. Thereafter, one develops a taste, ruchi, and attachment, atashakti. These are more or less kind of getting into Raganuga Bhakti because it becomes a more of a spontaneous act. Raganuga, raga means spontaneously acting. It's not due to fear or awe and reverence, or because it's a rule and a regulation. One actually desires to do it. It becomes a natural affinity. Raga nuga. It means that it becomes a natural activity for one. So thereafter, one develops a taste, which means they want to do it. And once the taste becomes more mature, then one's not only wants to do it, one is attached to doing it. One actually has to do it. I have to chant my rounds today. I have to do my deity worship. I have to make this offering to Krishna. It's no longer just because it's the time. They actually feel a love and a want. So this is the way of sadhana bhakti under the regulative principles. Now, gradually emotions intensify bhava, which means that it's the example of the sugar cane being cooked from a very liquidy substance, becomes more and more thicker and thicker, and the taste of that sugar becomes sweeter and sweeter as it becomes like molasses, and then thicker and thicker, and it actually becomes hard like a lozenge, which is prema, which we bring back here, which is bhava bhakti, is being described. The last stage of that ecstasy symptomized by transcendental bodily expressions. Then finally down here in the purport, Prabhupada says, these different stages of gradual development increase love of Godhead to the highest stage. And in the highest stage, there are still more symptoms, such as affection, which is called sneha, anger, attachment, and gradually rising in exceptional cases only in Srimati Radharani and Lord Chaitanya and Mahabhava. So I hope that clarifies the
That was
different
great.
stages.
Yeah.
That was great, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Okay, when Samapriya studied chapter 19 of the Madhya Lila, those of you who were with us, she had an artist, commissioned an artist to draw graphics of the Bhakti Lata. So she's going to explain a little bit about this particular image.
Well, actually, I was going to ask Premananda to talk a little about it because he has this picture on his wall. I'll just
nice.
say a couple of things. That this verse, Nityasiddha Krishna Prema Sajya Kabanoy, Shravanari Sudha Chite Karya Udoy, this whole little graphic here is a graphic of this verse. That devotional service is within everyone. This is the natural condition of the soul. And simply by associating with devotees, we spoke about that. Sometimes association will bring one to the point of ecstasy, associating with devotees or an object or something that will remind one of Krishna. And hearing their good instructions and chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, dormant love for Krishna is awakened. So that's actually the whole process of devotional service. And just like it is necessary for sunshine and rain to make beautiful flowers grow, the sunshine and rain for the Bhakti Lata is Shravanam Kirtanam. Shravanam Kirtanam. So that's why we are hearing from our spiritual master, reading his books, hearing from the Vaishnavas, and also associating with each other with the main purpose of hearing and chanting about Krishna. we have several reading groups, and the other day we were sitting outside reading, and it was magnificent. Just to speak and read the transcendental literature and with Vaishnavas, it's nourishing for the soul. So that helps the Bhakti Lata to grow. That's one aspect, hearing. The other aspect is kirtan, japa, kirtan, and sankirtan. So these are very, very important aspects to help our Bhakti Lata, which is the seed of devotion, to grow. What do you have? I'm leaving the rest to you, Premananda. Since this is on your wall, I'm thinking you glanced on it a few times.
Yes, you summarized it very beautifully. The reason why I have this on my wall is sometimes when we perform bhakti, sometimes we tend to become hopeless, say, oh, we are so far away from the goal, from prema bhakti. Will we ever reach there? How many lifetimes will it take us? At least for me, I get sometimes very discouraged, And then I look at this picture, and then where it says that the devotional services within everyone is lying dormant, and that gives me hope that, okay, this is not something that I have to obtain externally from somewhere. Is always there. I just have to continue the process, Shravanam, Kirtanam, and hopefully one day that will be fructified. So I just give this picture just to remind myself that, okay, I'm not too, of course it looks far, but it's not hopeless. There is hope.
It's certainly not hopeless. And actually, you might say that it looks far, but it is who you are. It is who we all are, servants of Krishna. It's our natural state of being. And the process of bhakti yoga is purification. We're just scrubbing our hearts so that we can realize who we really are and our eternal relationship with Krishna become manifest and be absorbed in transcendental divine love. And at every moment crying and falling to the ground, and because we're in total ecstasy and love, selfless love for Krishna. So this is the goal of bhakti yoga, and it's so achievable. Lord Chaitanya, I heard Prabhupada say on the tape the other day on a lecture, he was saying, we cannot perform these great austerities that they did in other yugas. At least we can speak. At least we can chant Hare Krishna. This is made for Kali Yuga people. Mm-hmm. So why not take advantage of the prime benediction for humanity?
Right. Thank you.
And thank you for referring to that, because it is a wonderful thing to understand that this is existing in our hearts and to take shelter of it, all of us, to take shelter of this process and see within our own hearts this bhakti lata developing to the point of we really don't care so much about what's going on in the material world. Unmute.
It looks like Elizabeth raised her hand.
Elizabeth.
Yes, it mentioned there, and I was also thinking, it talked there about old age and how in the old age it becomes more difficult to do certain services. And so if you could talk a little bit about that, because I think that, me personally, and I'm guessing other old devotees as well, experience, the illness and low energy and then with that, the guilt maybe of like,
oh boy, you got it right, girl.
That'd be great.
Okay, so I guess you asked us that because it's clear that I probably got everyone here beat. I'm a little older, but actually it's wonderful to be a devotee when you're young, but to be a devotee and grow old in Krishna consciousness, that I feel that's a great benediction. And the unfortunate thing is sometimes the neuroses and guilt, which is part of our material makeup, sometimes also is a problem. It's for sure our service does change when we get older. For one who was myself, I was a big Sankirtan devotee in Los Angeles and all over the world. I was distributing, running around from person to person, giving Krishna consciousness. And now it's not so easy to do that. So I really like being in a situation like this, so I can share Krishna consciousness with each other. We can share. but as long as you remember Krishna 24 hours a day. And another thing, to increase your rounds. If you increase your rounds as you get older, you will, it makes up your whole day, and you go deep into Krishna consciousness. And even though you're not able to physically do things that you once did, by increasing your hearing and chanting, you're still making advancement. And certainly your service does change. It's natural where you get older, you can't do so many physical things, but you can go deep into your own soul, into your own consciousness. So Lakshana?
Yeah, I was wondering about that last purport we read regarding, it says, when the creeper is fixed, then the fruit of the creeper comes into existence, and the gardener who nourished it is able to enjoy the fruit of love, and his life becomes successful. So my question is, does it mean that we have developed the relationship, or a particular relationship at that time, so we have the, our creeper is fixed now, so then we know what is our relationship exactly with the Lord.
It's a process. It's a process. It's definitely it's a process. We have to purify our hearts. That's why we're chanting and we're going through the process of sadhana bhakti. We purify our hearts, and if that hasn't, first of all, we know we're servants.
Mm-hmm.
That's a wonderful thing in the first place. And it will become clearer as the time goes on, as we release our hold on the material world, as the things that are happening in the world become less and less the essence of who we are. As we realize we're not these bodies, it takes time. Remember we talked about Krishna's plan taking time? That's my understanding.
Mm-hmm.
It takes time. I'd like to hear from my husband and Nanda about this particular question. What do you think, Pati, and then Nanda? That's a great question.
Yes, it is. When we were reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, you may remember that there's, in every living entity, there's a state called Sthayi Bhava. It means a continuous nature, a characteristic, just like we were speaking before about symptoms and characteristics. Each living entity, as part and parcel of Krishna, has an individual identity. And that identity is the actual identity, constitutional position in relationship with Krishna. And what we're doing is awakening that, just like that verse we saw in the Bhakti Lata Breach. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema, Sadhya Kabu Noi. Sadhya Kabu Noi means it doesn't come from someplace else. It's Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema, Sadhya Kabu Noi. It's inherent in the living entity. So as that awakens and we begin to, and we act, so Lakshana asked specifically, I believe, about the creeper becoming fixed in its position. Then the fruit of the creeper comes into existence. This is what happens when one's actually, it's kind of like when we put a seed in the ground, what happens is that it germinates and it starts to grow, but it doesn't grow fruit right away. We can't say that it's not manifesting, it's growing, but it's even in the dirt. You don't even see it sometimes. Once it sprouts above the ground, then it starts to reveal a little bit of its nature by the type of leaves which manifests. So the symptoms and characteristics of a particular rasa one may have may start to form at a particular part of that individual soul's growth. And as the plant comes further and further up out of the ground, manifesting its symptoms and its qualities as the Sravanam and Kirtanam continue, it's described that a natural affinity for a particular form of the Lord, a natural affinity for a particular relationship with the Lord, a natural attraction for particular types of devotees, and ultimately a particular devotee who is rendering service to the Lord becomes very attractive to that soul. And the more they follow it, then that's when the fruit finally starts to manifest in the form of their own feelings of love in that mood, until that process continues to grow and manifest and mature and the fruit becomes ripe. Nanda?
I don't have anything much more to add. I think you can go on, but thank you very kindly for the opportunity.
Okay. Anantasesha had a
Oh,
question.
yeah.
Thank you, Nandaji.
Hare Krishna, I have a question. When we say about purification from chanting, I've heard somewhere else that we are actually purifying our subtle body, which is mind, ego, false ego, and intelligence. Are we purifying all three or just the false ego? Getting rid of false ego?
Everything, as far as I know, everything gets purified, but you have to be patient. You have to be patient.
Well,
you
we'll
have to-
actually, go
Go
ahead.
on, Pat.
We'll
ahead.
actually read later in this third canto, Lord Kapila gives instructions to Devahuti that when one chants the holy name, the subtle body actually becomes dissolved. It
So
becomes
there you go.
purified, and ultimately this material body and our false ego should become completely dissolved and shed.
Right.
So
Very
then-
good.
I'm sorry.
on.
So can I follow up on that one?
Yeah.
So when you say subtle body dissolves, that means the mind and intelligence also goes away, right?
Yes.
Well, what happens is it gets transformed into Krishna conscious, completely absorption in Krishna in the spirit. It's not that there is a mind, there is a character, there's everything that we have in the material world, but it's in a contaminated state because we're identifying with matter. These are facilities that Krishna has created for us to relate to each other and to him. So there is it becomes all purified. And this is the Cheto Darpana Marjanam, the power of the holy name. That's it. It comes down to chanting. So let's chant more and chant our ways back to Godhead. Sulakshana?
Yeah, I was wondering about that when Dhruv Maharaj said that that you get attracted to particular devotee of the Lord. Now my question is, devotee of the Lord, does it mean the one which we are associating, or which is with in the Krishna's pastimes?
In Krishna's pastimes.
But you know what Prabhupada also said? Prabhupada said that when somebody asked him, Prabhupada, what does it mean? The same question somebody asked Prabhupada, what does it mean to be attached to a resident of Vrindavan? He said, I am that resident of Vrindavan. So while we're here in this plane, if we become attached to Krishna, if it's Srila Prabhupada, that he is the resident of Vrindavan, more will happen. It is unlimited, the amount of Krishna consciousness and revelation that will happen. If you have that desire, it is the desire of the soul.
Thank
Just
you.
stay with it and be patient. That's hard. I mean, I'm not really patient either, but I've been doing it and trying to be patient. It's got to work. It's got to work. Why? Because I'll give up everything for this. This is what I want. That's it. Nothing stand in my way.
The other day we were having that reading, and one of the devotees asked, is this blind faith? So your description of how you're being patient doesn't come from blind faith. It comes from a place where there's a foundation of reality that has been built over 50 years, so that the faith is even stronger now than it was because of all these different experiences, logic, intelligence, experience. What's that example that when we eat, different things happen? We get nourished, we get our hunger satisfied, and we relish the taste of the food. So similarly, there's progress in devotional life that is symptomatic, and it's there. We become freed from material entanglements and material desires. We gain attraction for Krishna, and we experience the pleasure of spiritual life. I think there's some more questions.
Okay, I would just want to add one thing. Just a tip. Here's a tip. The tip is that you might want to meditate on Sri Shikshastika. And while you're chanting, you take one verse, the first verse, and you read it over and over. And then in that mood, you chant the holy name, because the Sri Shikshastika talks about all the different stages of developing prema. It is a very profound, this is what Lord Chaitanya gave us. This is the essence of the Vedas and of all divine love. It's all there. So if you make that a little bit of your practice to meditate on, and it goes deeper, just like we were talking about the fungus before. There's no end to it. It transforms into divine love, and then even the residents of the higher planet, Goloka Vrindavan, their love is still expanding, and it's endless. So we're just like,
Those super excellent pastimes of Lord Krishna's babyhood, drowning in inhabitants of Gokul and pools of ecstasy.
Yeah. So this is it's just chanting. The Lord Prabhupada said that. But one time somebody told Srila Prabhupada, sometimes, this is in the beginning, Prabhupada, sometimes I see blue. A bunch of hippies. And Prabhupada said, just keep chanting, it will go away. So everything, it will go, everything will be perfect. And if somebody says, oh, Prabhu, you don't do anything, you're just chanting. Okay, you'll be inspired to do more and more and deeper. And as we're getting older, there's no excuse.
Let's go on to the questions. Please.
Okay, I'm sorry. I get lost. I'm sorry. Elizabeth, you had a question?
Because it comes all down to chanting, Mataji. With our ISKCON Namahata here, Kamiwa Bhakta Vrinda, we have this Zoom meetings every day. We get together at 5:30 in the morning for the Japa call. Then we do 6 o'clock Srimad Bhagavatam reading 15 minutes. In the evening, we do Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita and
wow.
Proceed by the Japa chanting. We added now in Telugu, where we're Japa chanting and then reading in Telugu. And then now we're adding Japa chanting followed by a Spanish reading that I will be doing. So if you know any people that want to join these calls for chanting and reading in these languages, you let us know.
Oh, where are you? Where are you located?
We are in Iowa, Mataji. They are in Cedar Rapids, most of them. I am in Waverly, but we are in Iowa. So
what a nice thing that you've come up with. That's beautiful. Very good. Thank you. Good. They only speak Spanish?
No, Mataji, they're all from India except me. So that's why the Telugu reading is there, and then
Telugu. I see.
English, Telugu, and Spanish now.
I see. Wow, we can talk about that more later. Anyone else have something? Oh, yeah, yes, my darling.
Hari Bol, thank you, Elizabeth, for that. I was just wondering if we can reasonably expect to experience our Sthayi Bhava in this lifetime.
That would be wonderful. Keep chanting. Okay. Have faith. It will when the time is right, it will happen.
Okay.
When the time is right. The thing about spiritual life, it will really get purified. We are satisfied at every moment. We're satisfied.
I like that. Yeah, that's helpful for an impatient person like me. That's very good advice.
You're not alone, dear. You're not alone. We are in the world of passion, and no one's patient. Okay, so that was delightful. Thank you, everyone. Pati, did you want to say something?
No, thank you very much. I think we can close there. More meditations on Uddhava and Vidura as we continue.
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavi. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna. Glories to Srila Prabhupada.